It's time for us to check in with our buddy who heads up Assist News. And if you don't take advantage of his services, you're really missing it. You can go to assistnews.net, and there you'll be receiving emails throughout the day, many of them, giving you an update of the persecuted church around the world. Dan Wooding's with us from his headquarters, his corporate headquarters in Southern California.
Well, thank you, brother. I wish I was as good looking as you.
Yeah, good to see you, buddy. Hey, listen, your experience on 9/11 was a little different. Where were you and what happened?
Yeah, I was in the country of Jordan, which is a very moderate Muslim country, with a team of 28 Christian journalists and leaders. And we were there to study the biblical roots of Jordan. And the very first day we were in a place called Jerash, which is the most complete and best preserved Greco-Roman city in the Middle East. And we were just about to start touring this place, and you can see in a moment a picture of the team there. Suddenly then we started walking through the place, and one of our team got a phone call from Dallas. And you can see the team there. We had no idea that the world was about to blow up. And as we were walking through the site, we got this message from Dallas, from a radio network, saying that there'd been a plane crash into the World Trade Center. We thought maybe it was just an accident, and then we went on to a place called Gadara. If you remember the story of Jesus' miracle with the Gadarene swine, it's a place that overlooks the Sea of Galilee. We got messages then of a second plane crashing, and all of a sudden we found out that we were trapped in Jordan, all 28 of us, all of us with US passports, and we were in a Muslim country. And we were transported to a hotel in the Dead Sea, Perry, and all of a sudden we heard a violent gun battle taking place across the Dead Sea in Jericho, and we thought maybe this was the end of the world. We had no idea it was a battle between the Israelis and the Palestinians, and we were there for a whole week. You imagine 28 people, we were an obvious target, and people would come up to us as we were walking around talking about the different sites and ask us where we were from, and we thought maybe they wanted to find out so they could kill us, and then they would suddenly say, "We're so sorry, we think this is terrible, this is not real Muslims who've done this." And we were there for a whole week, Perry, not knowing whether we were going to live or not, and then suddenly we got the news that Royal Jordanian Airlines was going to be allowed to return to the United States. And before we went to the airport, we went to Amman Citadel, which overlooks the main city. And there we took part in a large vigil, hundreds of people, Muslims, Christians, that lit candles. And when they lit these candles, the idea was that they were saying this violence has got to stop. We finally got on the plane. We had several armed guards on the plane with us from the FBI. We were met by the FBI when we arrived, and I was able to call my wife, who had been quite petrified that maybe I'd been killed while I was in Jordan, and I was glad to tell her that I was safe, but it was something I'll never forget. My 9/11 certainly was nothing like as terrible as those people in the Twin Towers and the Pentagon and on the plane, but I'll never forget it.
All right, so 28 of you trapped there for a while, and what a story. You ought to encapsulate that in a book somewhere. One of your many books, Dan.
Yes, it's in my book, Tabloid to Truth, which people can get, by the way. Just go to fromtabloidtotruth.com, and you can actually read it. It's called A Trip into Terror and Love, is the chapter about what happened in Jordan.
You know, you've often shared with us the fact that you were born in Nigeria to British missionary parents. Now, your life story, in and out of faith, that's a whole nother story. But as you're now writing about how many Nigerians are flooding the country to the UK, what's that all about?
Yeah, well, it's very interesting. My mum and dad were from Liverpool. Their names were Alfred and Ann Wooding, and they actually went to Nigeria in the 1930s, fell in love at the language school there, and got married in the city of Kano, a very famous walled city there. Well, they were there for many years sharing the gospel. And now it's fascinating. I learned this initially from my son Peter, who is back in the UK, that the Nigerians are now pastoring some of the largest churches in Great Britain. It's like the empire has struck back. They've got worried the way the spiritual tone of Britain is, and so they're flooding over there and starting new churches. And some of the churches there, by British standards, are huge. Well, the latest, and I've just written about it, is called The Higher Place, and it meets in the historical Devonport House in Greenwich. Now, that's a very famous area. It's a World Heritage area, and they've managed to rent, this Nigerian gentleman called Paul Elo has managed to rent a room in Devonport House, this beautiful place there. There's a picture of Pastor Paul Elo, and you'll see in a moment a picture of Devonport House, a beautiful place. And he's launched the church there, and now he's preaching to a very multiracial congregation. But it's so interesting that the Nigerians have decided to say thank you to the missionaries like my mum and dad, and they're coming back to Britain and saying, we're worried about you in Britain. You need to know more about Jesus. And they're now presenting the gospel. The gospel missionaries are returning, are going the other way now and coming into Britain. So what a great story. The church itself is called The Higher Place.
And that's on your website too, right?
Yes, it certainly is.
All right, let me encourage our viewers and listeners. You can go to assistnews.net. That's a website, and you read all these stories. But in addition to that, stories from all over the world. You'll receive, when you sign up, you'll receive at least a half a dozen, maybe more, emails a day. Thank you, buddy. Stay cool down there. We'll talk to you next week.
Thank you. God bless.